Coordinated principles of design coordinate things to each other, such as lines to shapes, lines to lines, patterns and colors, etc. But how should one set of coordinated things relate to another group of coordinated things? Imagine each set of coordinated things acting as a system, a whole entity unto itself. A system could be a car and all its parts, the leaves and branches of a tree, a person, a necklace, a pattern, a block of text, shapes and lines in the same color. Contrasts abound. Noted painter and educator Johannes Itten identified a range of contrasting conditions in his basic course at the legendary Bauhaus School of post-World War I Germany. In addition to a widely used system of 7 color contrasts, the types of visual contrast he suggested included the following list. Now for some examples. Here are 4 posters. 2 systems are at play here in each poster. System 1 is organic in nature and is comprised of, well, body parts. System 2 is geometric in nature and is comprised of type. Each system has unity unto itself. You'll notice that each system treats the negative space in a very dynamic way. The combined effect is very dynamic. At the end of this discussion, give yourself an exercise. Create a composition that is comprised of 2 or 3 contrasting systems, and integrate each system with the other systems using any of the following principles of unity. Proximity, grouping, overlapping, contour alignment or visual continuity, closure, containment, repetition or pattern, grids. The previous examples addressed the question, if each design element can be considered a system or part of a larger system, how do multiple systems integrate with each other? The answer lies within our friend, unity. We'll begin by pointing out examples of unity in this album cover. In the next few moments, you'll begin to notice how all systems gain some form of cohesion within themselves and how these larger systems begin to integrate with each other. The system of black is comprised of 3 smaller systems: type, image, and pattern. Type is largely a system of geometric shapes. This particular system of type has unity within itself because of its pattern and its grouping. The system of type also connects with the figure in the square photo due to visual continuity, otherwise known as alignment, specifically where the name, Roy Haynes, lines up with the bottom edge of the photo. Despite their contrasting qualities, both the type and the image repeat something in common: right angles and geometric edges. Visual continuity creates unity between the upper system of elements and the lower system of pattern, thus creating a larger system, the color black. Proximity helps manage the unity between the upper and lower systems. Proximity also creates tension. Tension can work for you or against you. In this case, the upper system of elements is visually connected to the lower system by a carefully managed sense of tension. Expanding the pattern upward has now created a form of tension that begins to call an unnecessary amount of interest to itself. It also begins to disable notions of a clearly felt visual hierarchy. Everything is now of equal importance. The visual pacing is a bit more chaotic than before. Compare also the distribution and pattern of negative space with that from before. Managing tension enables negative space to play a dynamic role in the unity, balance, and visual pacing of this composition. The eye moves freely, and the visual pacing between elements is inviting. The negative space truly becomes a coordinating principle and has emerged, in effect, as an additional system worthy of one's careful attention. Visual continuity creates unity between the upper and lower visual elements. The overall system of white is thus strengthened. The system of black overlaps the system of red. The red bands reinforce the strong horizontal alignment of the Roy Haynes name and the bottom edge of the image. It also establishes the dominant direction of this composition, which is horizontal. The white type of Andrew Hill pops through the system of red and runs adjacent to the system of black type. The range of visual hierarchy has now expanded. The white type is now part of the greater system of white created by the negative space that envelops the black pattern below, adding depth in the process. Visual continuity integrates both the black and white systems while reinforcing a subordinate direction, which is vertical. So we now have a dominant direction, horizontal, and the subordinate direction, vertical. What systems are being contrasted as this next image appears? Organic versus geometric shapes, vertical versus horizontal, color versus black, lines versus shapes, fluid versus stable, all the above. How is each system integrating with the other? Repetition, pattern, overlapping, proximity, grouping, visual continuity. Repetition for sure. We see that this typeface repeats down over here as well. In fact, the lighter weighted typeface over here is the same family as this font. There's repetition. This image is largely grayscale. It is grayscale. And the typography here is gray and black. So there's repetition there. There's also pattern. The pattern of typography. Type has pattern in and of itself. But even within this selection over here, we have a pattern of two subsystems. The system of red type and the system of blue type. And each has its own kind of pattern, and they combine to form one larger pattern. Proximity. This group of type is very close to this figure. Very close. Proximity. This line of text, very close to this block of text over here, this person's name, Dexter Gordon. Visual continuity. Well, visual continuity is pretty evident everywhere. Even when you have a block of text like this, if you have flush right or flush left text, you've got visual continuity, you have a visual line. Even when your text sits on a line, on the baseline. The baseline of typography is the imaginary line that text sits upon. That's visual continuity. And last but not least, how does the system of type up here relate to the image down over here? Well, one way is by, of course, repetition of color, the grayscale, but also by visual continuity. Look at the N and look at the eyebrow. Visual continuity. What systems are being contrasted as this image appears? Organic versus geometric shapes, horizontal versus vertical, color versus black, lines versus shapes, fluid versus stable. Organic versus geometric shapes, horizontal versus vertical, lines versus shapes. You obviously have the organic shape of the combined figures versus the geometric shapes of the paneling on the fence and the pinstriping on the canvas above the fence. You've got contrast of horizontal lines versus vertical lines, and of course the figures are vertical themselves. And then lastly you have lines versus shapes. Shapes of the figure is one thing. You have the fence itself, which is a series of shapes interrupted by vertical lines, and of course the vertical pipe, the vertical lines on the canvas at the very top edge. How is each system integrating with the other? Repetition and pattern, overlapping, proximity, grouping, visual continuity. In the case of the figure and its relationship to the background, this is clearly an example of overlapping. What systems are being contrasted as this image appears? And how is each system integrating with the other?